What's going on, everyone? Welcome into episode 2 of the Goal Line Stand podcast, brought to you by the Ledge Sports. I'm Zach Hummel, and I'm joined as always by Cole Little. What's going on, Cole?
I've been better, battling a little bit of a cold, so you gotta bear with me tonight. But yeah, another pretty exciting weekend in the NFL. So ready to talk about that.
I appreciate your grit and toughness for showing up to the podcast with a little bit of a cold. I think
Yeah,
Josh McCown would, be impressed by the toughness you're showing. He had an
yeah,
interesting press conference after his game. I wrote a little something on the Ledge about it today.
yeah. I checked that out. That was good. But yeah, you have to kind of admire McCown. He got real emotional about that. I'm not necessarily gonna cry over having, a cold, but yeah, you have to admire that guy. I mean, he went from basically retiring and becoming a middle school PE coach to back in the league, and now he's hanging tight with the Browns. I mean, they seem to have so much quarterback turnover, but he's arguably been the best quarterback they've had in like a decade, really.
Yeah, and we'll talk about his injury later in the podcast, maybe. We don't really need to touch on the Cleveland Browns as they're kind of a nothing team right now. But we can start with some of the bigger games of the weekend, the more interesting games. Clock slate. I was flying back from Chicago, so I actually got to watch the 4 o'clock games, not so much the 1 o'clock ones. We can start with the Rams. They're opening their first game at the Coliseum while their stadium is being built. The turnout was good. There was a good atmosphere going on at that game, and the Rams always seem to have the Seahawks number. The last couple of seasons, they've been one of the teams to kind of show other teams in the playoffs how to beat the Seahawks. And, again, they did it. They beat them 9-3. Definitely a field goal battle. There's something going on with the Seahawks offense I just can't pinpoint. I don't know if it's whether they don't have the weapons or their offensive line's crap, or they're missing Marshawn Lynch. What do you think's going on with the Seahawks offense? It really sputtered on Sunday.
Well, like you said, the offensive line has been kind of crap. They traded stalwart center Max Unger a few years back for Jimmy Graham, and that's actually surprisingly turned out to be a bad trade for the Seahawks. Graham's been hurt. He's declined rapidly in production. But, yeah, the line's not great. But the thing is, to me, this team is skirted by for several years now with basically giving Russell Wilson no weapons. I mean, of course, they got Percy Harvin, but he stayed hurt the whole time. And, I mean, if you look at the Seahawks roster, they have arguably the worst wide receiving core talent-wise in the
For
entire
sure.
league. I mean, Doug Baldwin is the guy out there. And we're talking about basically, a guy who struggled to find a place in the league out of Stanford, a really undersized guy. All their receivers are undersized. It's kind of a shame. I mean, we're talking about Russell Wilson, arguably the most talented quarterback, the most well-rounded quarterback in the league, and he has the worst weapons out of any of the great quarterbacks because obviously Jimmy Graham has been hurt and, hasn't really been the Jimmy Graham of old since they traded for him. So I don't know. I mean, they're going to have to do something because that offense has looked awful the first 2 weeks. I mean, it's not like it was a fluke that week 1 against Miami. It was basically the same thing this past week. Of course, the defense is amazing, like everyone expected it to be. It's amazing once again, but that offense is not looking great. I mean, most people, including myself, expected them to be back in Super Bowl contention, but right now they're looking nowhere near that.
Yeah, you really never see Pete Carroll show a lot of emotion on the sideline. I posted a tweet on the Ledge Twitter. He went absolutely ballistic at a targeting call. And, that's Pete Carroll's the kind of guy that wears his emotions on his sleeve, and that kind of showed me that he knows his team's in trouble this year. And like you said, their defense is amazing, so they don't need to do too much on offense to win the game, and they still couldn't do it against the Rams, who do have a good D-line, so that was just a bad matchup for them because their offensive line's terrible, like we mentioned. But, yeah, Seahawks, they should have lost to the Dolphins if the Dolphins weren't so inept in week 1. So the Rams just have the Seahawks number. I don't know if Jeff Fisher has some secret plan or secret sauce that he puts in the Seahawks water, but it seems like Fisher's keeping a job just because he keeps beating the Seahawks year in and year out. But he'll end up, 6-10 or 8-8, like he always does. But kudos to the Rams. They played hard after they got embarrassed, quite frankly, by the 49ers. And that's a marquee win, especially, their first game in LA, big team coming in, big NFC West rival. And they beat them. So give them props, but definitely the Seahawks need to work on some offensive things. They need to make it easier for Russell Wilson. I'm not sold on Rawls or Michael as the running back. The offensive line is definitely an issue, but I think Marshawn Lynch's ability to break arm tackles kind of shadowed a lot of that last year. And I'm not sure Rawls and Michael are the same player that he is in that fact that they can break those tackles. So, they're going to have to figure it out because their schedule only gets tougher. They play the AFC East. They'll have to go to Arizona. Arizona will come to them. So the Seahawks have to figure it out quick because it definitely doesn't get any easier for them moving forward.
Yeah, for sure.
And another game we can touch on, Cowboys-Redskins, one of these classic NFC East matchups. I didn't catch a lot of this game. I watched the highlights. Dak Prescott, he impressed me in game 1 against the Giants, and he only furthered that fact in this game against the Redskins. He kind of outdueled Kirk Cousins. They both put up good numbers, but he went on the road with this Cowboys team, and, they looked pretty good. I'm a big Redskins guy. I thought I was high on them coming into the year, and to start 0-2 is a little disappointing because I thought Kirk Cousins was going to have a breakout season, but there's been some rumblings of unrest with Kirk Cousins and the coaching staff, I think, coming out of Washington. I'm not quite sure what that's about. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, I did. Maybe Gruden's not necessarily happy with his play. I know some of the guys in the locker room aren't necessarily happy with his play. But, this seems to be a yearly occurrence with the Redskins. They have hotheads. They added another hothead this offseason with Josh Norman. They just have hothead after hothead, so there's always some type of dissension going on. Kirk Cousins is a fiery guy. He showed some emotion on the sideline during that game. But, even though his numbers were good, like you said, he definitely got outplayed by Prescott. Prescott 22 of 30 for 292 yards. Ezekiel Elliott had a decent game. But, yeah, kudos to Prescott because he was poised the entire game. He was really poised week 1. The Cowboys between the Terrence Williams blunder at the end and some defensive struggles, specifically in the secondary. That's the only reason they lost that game to the Giants. It really had nothing to do with Prescott. But he's looked really solid these first 2 weeks. And, who knows? With Romo continuing to stay hurt like he does, maybe Prescott will establish himself as the guy in Dallas, the quarterback of the future. But, he definitely outplayed Cousins. The Cowboys look pretty good to start the year, and Washington's already in an 0-2 hole. This was supposed to be, their year to really establish themselves as maybe the cream of the crop in that NFC East. But so far, they've been a little disappointing.
Yeah, I think the Redskins' issue is they have Kirk Cousins throwing it 50 to 55 times a game. They don't have a running game. They have Matt Jones and Thompson. When last year, Alfred Morris was really underrated for them. He's obviously now on the Cowboys, but his ability, he would rush for 100 yards and he'd score on the goal line all the time. He was also a good option out of the backfield. I think that helped Cousins, gave him a play action sort of look. Now, no one respects their running game, so everyone's just loading up. Trying to put pressure on Cousins, double teaming his. He has some great wide receivers, especially Josh Dotson. He kind of debuted in that game, but yeah, the Redskins 0-2. That's not a good look in the NFC East when it looks like the Cowboys are going to be there. The Giants are 2-0. The Eagles, their win last night. So the Redskins are definitely behind the 8 ball, similar to the Seahawks in a way that they kind of need to figure it out. On both sides of the ball, but especially on offense to really, push them to where they should be. Because I think coming into the season, we both probably had the Redskins and the Seahawks making the playoffs, and as it stands now, neither would make it in. So, yeah, I know it's really early in the season, but it's interesting to see how these storylines develop. So we'll keep an eye on that Kirk Cousins turmoil with Jay Gruden. As you said, they're both fiery characters. Another game we can touch on, Pats Dolphins. I was stuck on the tarmac for 40 minutes before my plane took off, so I was checking my phone constantly because my plane was right when the 1 o'clock games kicked off. So I checked it, 7-0 Pats, 14-0 Pats, and then I couldn't get Wi-Fi on my plane. So I just figured the Pats would roll. But when we landed, my Uber driver told me Garoppolo got injured and Brissett was in, and we were only up by 7 points. So I got a little bit nervous there, but the Patriots held on. Looks like Garoppolo's injury is not as serious as first thought, I think. It's an AC strain in the shoulder. It's pretty up in the air whether he's going to play. The Patriots like to keep the injury reports pretty close to the vest, so we'll see if Jimmy G played. But he was amazing in that game before he got injured. And I know everyone wants to talk about a quarterback controversy. Brady will be the starter when he gets back, but it's good for Patriots fans. We want all the good quarterbacks we can get. Either, Garoppolo will replace Brady once he leaves, or we can trade Garoppolo. Because if Sam Bradford's getting a first-round pick, I think Garoppolo's worth maybe 2 or 3 at this point from what he's shown.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like you said, you can't really bash him at all for the way he's played in the first 2 games. He's looked incredible. I mean, it's hard to believe with his little starting experience, his little playing experience period as he has. It's a shame he got hurt, but like you said, not necessarily as serious as people first thought. I saw a report that there's a chance he'll play this week. Of course, they have a Thursday night game, so it's a short week, but there is a chance he'll play. But yeah, I mean, he's looked great. The Patriots have been clicking on all cylinders on offense. The defense was a little suspect in that second half against the Dolphins, so let them get back into the game. Tannehill seems to be the king of garbage time, it seems like.
Yeah, that's true.
That's when he really turns it on. But, they held on. But yeah, Garoppolo, it is interesting because Brady's been saying for a few years now that he wants to play till he's, like 44, 45, something like that. So, I mean, you got to wonder what this is doing in terms of how Belichick and the other Patriots execs and coaches are thinking about the quarterback situation. I mean, will they hold on to him for as long as possible and just kind of let Brady, play it out as long as he wants, or will they explore trading him? Because, I mean, great quarterbacks are really hard to come by, as we've seen these past few years. So with Garoppolo establishing himself, I mean, he's got the size, he's got the arm, he's smart, pretty accurate, doesn't turn it over. He's becoming a hot commodity, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I mean, it's kind of weird, as good as he's been, that, in a few weeks he's going to have to go back to holding the clipboard on the sideline. But, he's definitely looked great so far, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, that storyline in the coming season scares the shit out of Patriots fans like myself, because I definitely don't want to let him go. I think Brady could fall off a cliff like Peyton did at any moment. So I want to keep him around, because if Brady ever gets injured again, we actually have a guy that, it looks like he's a great quarterback. I saw a stat today that he leads the NFL in QBR on third down. This kid who has not started in the NFL before this year. And it's not like he played at a big SEC school or Big Ten. He played at Eastern Illinois. I mean, he's playing directional schools we've never heard of. So what he's been doing in the NFL it's really been amazing. Everyone wants to say it's a burden for the Patriots now. I think it's a good thing. You can never, like you said, have too many good quarterbacks. So I'm pretty Patriots will handle this well. I just don't know if they're willing to pay 2 quarterbacks if Garoppolo becomes a free agent or they try to trade him, because the Patriots are already stingy as it is with the checkbook. So I'm not sure it behooves them to pay both big money. So that's a couple years down the line, hopefully, so we don't have to really worry about that this season. But when Brady comes back, he'll be the quarterback, but we know we have a good backup in Garoppolo. It'll be interesting to see with the short week whether he plays. I'd rather just rest him and let Brissett play, kind of throw him into the wolves. We're playing the Texans, who have been hot, so it is at home. We've had the Texans number. It'll be interesting to see how that game goes if Garoppolo does play. I just don't want him to get him injured again, because if Brady comes back, he gets injured. Brissett's our guy, which I'm not confident in. He wasn't even that good at NC State. So we'll keep an eye on that. 2 other games we want to talk about quickly. We talked about Steelers, Bengals. I love these AFC North games. Someone always is carted off the field. Not that that's a good thing, but it is football, so we want to see contact. Steelers pulled a big win at home. It kind of solidified them as if not the best team in the AFC, right behind the Patriots. They don't even have Le'Veon Bell. They're missing Bryant. They'll get Bell back. Bryant's out for the year. Big Ben just doing it again. He's such an underrated quarterback in my mind just because he hasn't won a Super Bowl in a couple years. He's a great regular season quarterback. He leads them to victory. The Steelers are good every year no matter the personnel. Their defense, I still don't trust it. I'll put that out there. I still don't trust their defense. I just don't think Andy Dalton and his weapons had the firepower to take them out. What do you think about that game, Steelers-Bengals?
It was a weird game. It was really sloppy. I mean, the Steelers definitely looked like the better team from start to finish. Really, the story of the game to me is, I'm completely baffled by the Bengals offense. In recent years, part of their downfall, part of the reason why they haven't really been to solidify themselves as a true Super Bowl contender is, they fail to utilize their running backs properly. I mean, the Bengals have arguably the best running back tandem in all of football with Jeremy Hill and Giovanni Bernard. And I'm looking at these stats. Hill had 22 yards on the ground. Bernard had 17. Bernard only got 5 carries. Hill only 11. They didn't run it enough week 1. That's part of the reason that they were lucky to come away with a victory against the Jets. They definitely didn't run enough against the Steelers. Like you said, the Steelers don't necessarily have that threatening, beastly front seven like we're so used to them having. They battle injuries with Ryan Shazier. Bud Dupree is starting linebacker. He's on IR to start the year. I figured the Bengals, would go to the ground because they really shadowed A.J. Green hard. He was double-teamed practically the whole game, so I figured that they would go to the ground, but they didn't. They have a new offensive coordinator because, of course, Hugh Jackson took the head coaching job at Cleveland, but it really it looks like it's maybe the same old Bungles. I mean, they've gotten off to kind of a shaky start. I mean, they came away with a good victory week 1 against the Jets, but they still didn't necessarily look great. The offensive line hasn't looked too good, but the Steelers did come away with a victory. D'Angelo Williams, good Lord, they're pounding him hard. I mean, he had 32
a good game.
carries. He's like 33 years old, and he had 32 carries in that game. He really helped them come away with the victory, and that's what Cincinnati should have done, is use their much younger, more imposing running backs, but they didn't. But it was kind of a sloppy game. Sammy Coates was big for Pittsburgh, had 2 really big catches. Roethlisberger got it done. He mostly killed the Bengals with the deep ball. Cincinnati's secondary hasn't looked particularly good in these first 2 games, but Pittsburgh got it done again. I mean, even though the Bengals have been better record-wise these past few years, the Steelers, to me, are still the cream of the crop in that division. The Bengals have yet to establish themselves as a playoff threat. Pittsburgh proved that yet again with their victory this past Sunday.
Yeah, as a fellow redhead, I want Andy Dalton to be good so bad, but it just doesn't seem to be coming out. It seems like the offense is getting simpler every year he's in the NFL.
Yeah, definitely.
And it really should be going the other way. It should be getting more complex. He should be making checks at the line. It seems like the Bengals, it's either a screen pass, a deep corner, or just a go route for A.J. Green. There's no mix-up of their play calls. And I don't know if it's Andy Dalton's propensity, like he just can't handle it, or they just don't trust him. But, it's his 4th or 5th year in the league, and he should really be, coming along as a quarterback, being able to make calls at the line, being able to, take on more of a playbook. It seems like they're kind of holding his hand through this, and I think with the talent they have in their offense, like you mentioned, they have 2 good backs. They have stable wide receivers. When they get Eifert back, he's a stud. They really should be better than they are, but, another first-round exit in the playoffs, if they even make it, seems coming for the Bengals. So same old Bengals, same old Steelers pretty much. Just a story of 2 different teams. This game was interesting. Broncos-Colts. I think you had this as your upset pick last week. Broncos proved something to me because I'm not high on the Colts, but when you have Andrew Luck at the helm, you always have a chance to win. Trevor Siemian showed me something. They're still throwing they throw those jailbait screens to Demaryius Thomas every time, and they seem to work every single season. Teams just can't deal with it. They have an athletic O-line. They pound it with C.J. Anderson. They're going to win with their defense. It seems like, it's just without Peyton Manning there, it's a little different, obviously, because they can't check as much at the line, but they're still going to win the same way they do with the Kubiak system, the good pass rush. Von Miller had a big sack in that game. It just seems like the same old Broncos. Well, the Colts, Pagano may be on the hot seat. They have nothing around Andrew Luck, though. Their O-line stinks, and their defense is downright terrible. You let the Broncos put up 34 on you, you got big issues.
Yeah, I'll first say I was definitely really wrong about Trevor Siemian. I mean, I doubted him from the get-go, but clearly Kubiak, who, was an NFL quarterback himself, knew what he was doing when he made him the starter. He's looked pretty good. But, this game to me was just, like you said, the Colts' defense is pathetic. They were pathetic week 1 against the Lions. I mean, look, the Lions only scored 15 on the lowly Titans in week 2, so that should tell you something. They nearly dropped 40 week 1 against the Colts. But, I don't know, man. Andrew Luck, I feel like he's been kind of, he got that monster contract and everybody still touts him. I can't help but feel like maybe people are letting him skate by just because of how highly touted he was coming out of college. Because to me, he seemed to go backwards. I mean, I know, like you said, the offensive line is not too good. But, I mean, he was beat up all last year, and so far I haven't necessarily been very impressed. Kind of like the Bengals, not a lot of creativity on offense. They probably should have gone out and gotten a younger, possibly drafted a running back, a quality running back, or signed a younger running back via free agency because they're going with old man Frank Gore, and that's just really not going to get it done. I mean, they have T.Y. Hilton, and that's really their only established weapon. Moncrief had kind of high expectations coming into the year, but he's faltered. But, yeah, I mean, the defense is miserable, and the offense, they put up a lot of points against Detroit, but, it didn't necessarily look like it was clicking. I mean, this is a team that it really seemed like the Colts, 2 seasons ago were about to become the team in the AFC, surpass the Patriots and the Broncos and the Steelers, but it's like they've gone backwards. And based on what I've seen so far, the Texans, I mean, just looking at the AFC South, the Texans definitely look better. The Jaguars look better. You could even make the case that the Titans look better. I mean, they have a better record at least. But, this is a Colts team. They might be missing out on the playoffs for the second straight year. And considering they gave both Luck and Coach Pagano those mega, massive, ridiculous contracts this past offseason, it may make them look, kind of stupid. And there may be a time for some change in Indianapolis because based on the way things have looked so far, they're definitely going to struggle to even go 500, let alone get in the playoffs.
Yeah, I would not be surprised, even with that deal, if Pagano got fired. Irsay is crazy, and if they have two straight years they don't make the playoffs with Andrew Luck at quarterback, like you said, I think I agree with you that people are letting him kind of skate just because he had a couple good years and he was good in college. You kind of have to start expecting a little bit more out of him, even with the weapons he has, because there's a bunch of quarterbacks who don't have a lot of weapons in the NFL, but they make it work and they win games. I just think their defense is their biggest issue. They really just need to improve on defense, and I think everything will come together on that front.
I mean, Luck to me,
go
I
on.
mean, Luck has been good, but I mean, he's been outplayed by Russell Wilson. He's been outplayed by Cam Newton. You could even make the case he's been outplayed stats-wise by Andy Dalton. I mean, he's been outplayed since he came into the league by several of his peers around his own age, and he's just kind of skated by, and, he gets that ridiculous contract. I don't know. He's not very accurate. He's not – he hasn't really proved to me that he's a real heady quarterback like Drew Brees or Aaron Rodgers. He just seems – I don't know. I'm just not really sure if he's the guy. He can be a long-term, franchise caliber quarterback. I mean, he really needs to prove something to me and a lot of people this year. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, there could be massive changes in Indianapolis by the end of the season.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see if he ends up, coming to his talent and becoming an Aaron Rodgers type, or if he just kind of stays stagnant and becomes more of a Matt Ryan, Matt Stafford type. So we'll keep an eye on Luck this year to see if he improves or he digresses. So why don't we dip into our segments? We'll start with best and worst of the weekend. What was your best of the weekend? Start it off.
There were a lot of good things this weekend. I'm going to have to give props. This isn't really necessarily the quote-unquote best of the weekend, but I'm going to have to give props to Carson Wentz because I was one of his doubters. When he came into the league, I was shocked that the Eagles took him at 2. I just figured it was a classic Eagles move. And I wasn't actually too surprised when training camp opened up and there was word that, he would be third on the depth chart by the time the regular season rolled around. But, they make a trade for Sam Bradford, which probably wouldn't even have happened. They probably wouldn't even have traded Bradford if Teddy Bridgewater hadn't gotten hurt in that freak practice injury. And then all of a sudden Wentz is inserted into the starting lineup, and he's been amazing his first 2 games. Stats from the Monday night game, the 29-14 Eagles victory over the Bears, weren't necessarily great. 21 for 34 for 190 yards, only 1 touchdown. But he's been very accurate. He's been very poised. He has Alshon Jeffrey, but other than that, he doesn't really have any true established weapons. But he's really made it work. Sorry, I was thinking about Cutler. He has Jordan Matthews, but he doesn't really have any other established weapons receiver-wise. But, he's made it work. He's gotten everybody involved. He's been, really poised. He's been really great in the pocket. And this was a guy, of course, he was a big-time winner at North Dakota State, but, playing at the FCS level, you had to wonder if he was, really worth getting picked as high as he was in the draft and whether or not he would be able to come in and play right away. And clearly he's proved that, you look at Jared Goff, like he's not even playing out in L.A., and based on things I've heard, he's really nowhere close to being a true starter. I'm sure he'll find his way into the starting lineup at some point this year, but, he seems to be far behind. But, look at Wentz. He's looking like an established quarterback. He's looked better than a lot of veteran quarterbacks thus far to start the season. And, who knows, that NFC East, kind of a wacky division. It's been real wacky these past few years. Who knows, maybe he'll lead the Eagles to a division title.
Yeah, I'm high on Wentz as well. I wrote something today that kind of highlighted the throws he made. He stands in that pocket and he'll deliver the ball even if he takes big hits. He has great accuracy on the run, which I compared to Aaron Rodgers. Just the way he can move out of the pocket, shift a little bit, and still deliver the ball where it needs to be. So, yeah, I actually had it as my best of the weekend too, but I have another one. I'll go a little off the field. My best of the weekend was a fight that took place during the Raiders-Falcons game. Yeah, it looked like it was a friendly firefight. 2 Raiders fans going at it. It looked like there was a little Asian man trying to karate this, larger black gentleman, and I think the little Asian man probably had too many beers or whatever alcohol he was drinking, and he kind of tipped the guy's hat, and then all mayhem broke out, and some guy, cold cocked him from the back, knocked him out. I was just glad that guy got knocked out because I hate being at games where people are overly drunk and just, making a fool out of themselves. And I don't like people that affect other people watching the game. So, especially a fan of the same team you're rooting for, and he pisses you off so much that you have to punch him. That guy should reevaluate his life. But I love the NFL fights. We had another one in the Rams game where this dad was trying to protect his son, and he just let out a shriek like he's never seen a fight before. He's never been in one. I just love these fights in the stands at NFL games because it's literally just, the scum of the scum in the upper deck with, had 20 beers in the parking lot, and they're just ready to brawl.
Well, it seems like it happens most of the time at California venues for some reason.
Yeah.
Like there's something always going on in a 49ers game. Like somebody's getting shanked in the bathroom. It's just awful. Like I don't understand why. You think it would be in maybe more, hardy football cities like Chicago or Philly or New York.
Yeah.
but it seems to always be in the Bay Area and now LA. So who knows? I don't know what's up with that. But I did see
Yeah,
that video. That was pretty funny.
I think the reason is like these guys are drinking in the sun all day. Like it's hot out there and they're starting to get delirious. They have no idea what's going on, so they just start fighting. They just start annoying each other. But that was my best of the weekend. So what'd you have for your worst of the weekend?
Um, I was really tempted to go with the Browns again because they
Yeah,
blew
it's like an every
because
week thing.
they blew that big lead. I think they were up 20-0. But since I went with the Browns, more specifically RG3 last week, I'm gonna pick on somebody else. I'm gonna pick on Jameis Winston. I'm just gonna pick on the Bucks as a whole because I thought they beat the Falcons. They looked good week one, beat the Falcons on the road, um, pretty much controlled that game from start to finish. And it looked like maybe they were going to establish themselves as a true playoff contender. I thought coming into the season that they would definitely give it a go at getting a wild card spot. Of course, that division pretty much belongs to the Panthers, but I thought maybe they'd give it a go at getting a wild card. But they were pathetic against the Cardinals. The Cardinals' offense looked pretty subpar week one against the Pats, but they scored at will against the Bucks week two. But I mean, as far as Winston, he threw for 243 yards, but 4 picks. Just looked kind of out of filter all game. Looked uncomfortable in the pocket. He had like the weirdest. He was a Pro Bowler. I think he was an injury alternate, but he was still a Pro Bowler his rookie year. And it was like the weirdest Pro Bowl season ever because
Pro Bowl means nothing anymore.
yeah, but I mean Winston's been really strange ever since really his final season at Florida State. I mean, of course he was fantastic at his Heisman winning season, but beginning of that next season, it's like for a 1 or 2 game stretch he'll be practically perfect and then he'll just be complete garbage. And the NFC is kind of weird. Like I think we mentioned this on last week's show. The AFC has several established teams. Who they'll be in the playoffs competing for a spot in the Super Bowl. But the NFC, things are kind of up in the air. I mean, that the Panthers are going to be great. That the Cardinals are going to be great. But the Seahawks have been disappointing. The Redskins have been disappointing. The Packers really have been disappointing. So things are kind of up in the air. So, I mean, no telling what the Bucks could do if they have a really solid Pro Bowl caliber Winston under center. But, he definitely looked bad. I mean, I know the Cardinals' defense is great, but he looked bad all game. The Buccaneers looked horrible. That was a huge fall off from what was a big week one victory.
Yeah, I was actually down in Tampa for week one, and the Bucks fans were going crazy that they were playing so well, and they had high hopes for the season, but it kind of came. I know it's early, but it came crashing down because a lot of the Bucks fans felt that they could go on the road and, if not beat the Cardinals, stay in the game, and they got blown out 40-7. I was gonna go with the Browns for my worst of the week, but we'll lay off them this week. I'm sure we'll talk about them next week with Cody Kessler starting.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the Jaguars. Another team that had a lot of high expectations coming into this year. Blake Bortles, all the weapons he has. They have how many first-round draft picks on their defense all over the place, pass rushers, interior guys, linebackers. And they went on the road to a Keenan Allen-less Chargers team who has a piss-poor defense. And they lost Danny Woodhead during the game, and they just laid an egg. They got blown out. The game was over, if not at halftime, early in the third quarter. Bortles, he's going back to his old turn the ball over, throwing picks. He's really lacks pocket presence. He doesn't know when the rush is coming, and he turns the ball over. I just thought they may go on the road and kind of establish themselves with a win after they performed pretty well versus the Packers at home week one. But old Phillip Rivers, you don't just walk into Qualcomm and win. He threw for 1 billion yards versus that defense, was throwing touchdowns all over the field to guys I've never even heard of. So, yeah, my worst of the weekend is the Jags, and we can filter that into Coach on the Hot Seat. This is a new segment. Week 2, there's already rumblings about people getting fired, so I'm just going to go with the Jags, Gus Bradley. I think he's on the hot seat this year. the owner Khan has high expectations for this team. He's put a lot of money into it. They signed a lot of free agents. Malik Jackson from the Broncos. They have Robinson, Hearns, all these guys. 2 tight ends, good running backs. Bortles, jury's still out on him, but he's a serviceable quarterback. I think this year they were looking to make the playoffs, and if they keep playing like they did versus the Chargers, they're going to be 6-10. And I think Bradley gets fired just because he's been there a couple years now, and they haven't really gotten any better. So I'll put Gus Bradley on the hot seat going into Week 3.
Yeah, for sure. For me, I had really 2. I mean, we already talked about Pagano, obviously getting that 4-year deal at the end of last season after he had, pretty much been on the hot seat. It seemed like ESPN was reporting every day last November that he could be fired at any moment, but somehow he ended up with a new 4-year deal out of it. But he's definitely going to end up on the hot seat if the Colts end up playing continue to play like they've been playing. But I'm also going to mention Sean Payton. This is a guy that seems to get a free pass year in and year out. I mean, I know he has a great track record. He's won a Super Bowl with New Orleans. When he first took over in 2006, they were really great for straight 5-6 years after that. But they just haven't been that good the past 30 or 40 years. I mean, the defense, I know he's an offensive-minded guy, but the defense has been pretty terrible. It's been, I don't know, it's been all right, I guess, when you look at their overall roster. It's been kind of all right to start this season off, but just the offense doesn't seem to be in any sort of rhythm. I mean, they only put up 13 against the Giants, who have some question marks themselves on defense. It just looks like for yet another season, the Saints are going to underwhelm. Maybe for the second straight year, they'll miss out on the playoffs, because they're definitely not looking like they're going to be competing with the Carolina Panthers anytime soon. Who knows? They may be surpassed by the Bucs if Jameis is able to play at a Pro Bowl level continuously. But you got to wonder how much longer they're going to stick with Garrett. I mean, he's been through the Bounty Gate scandal and all that junk. He's been through roster change. I mean, the Saints, other than having Breeze, is their mainstay. I mean, they seem to go through just a plethora of big-time roster changes year in and year out. It's like, they're doing whatever they can other than making a coaching change. And you just got to wonder, if the Saints miss out on the playoffs again after, Breeze with his massive deal, if they miss out on the playoffs again with the talent they do have, you got to wonder if Jason Garrett will get axed.
Yeah, Sean Payton, you mean, right? Sean Payton.
Sean Payton, excuse me.
Yeah, Sean Payton. Yeah, I agree with you. That was one that crossed my mind. When you have a quarterback like Breeze, you have to be in the playoffs just because he can get you there with himself. You just need a good enough defense to kind of hold the fort. They do have good weapons. They have Snead, they have Cooks, they have Colby Fleener at tight end now. Their offensive line's shaky. Their running game's a little bit shaky. But, yeah, Payton should definitely, if not be fired if they have another bad season, he should at least have to answer for why the team's struggling as much as they are. I think we'll roll into our power rankings quickly. You want to do yours first, or you want me to go?
You start off this one.
All right, I'm going to go Patriots #1. They're a fucking train right now. They got to be the favorite to win the Super Bowl. When Brady gets back, Gronk gets back. We're doing this all without Gronk, too, which, a lot of people aren't talking about. The defense, I think they'll figure it out. I think last week they took their foot off the pedal after they got such a big lead. And like you said, Tannehill just garbage time. He's the garbage man. They're my #1. #2, Steelers. Beat the Bengals at home. That's a good win. I just like their coaching staff. Tomlin, he's got some balls on him. He'll make those tough decisions you need to make. He's not the brightest guy, I don't think, but he's a football guy who makes football decisions. #3, Broncos. Like you said, impressed by Simeon in that game. I thought he's a wet blanket, but he played pretty well. Colts defense is bad, but it'll be interesting to see how that team does when they actually play someone on the road that's tough. So I have the Broncos at 3. 3 AFC teams starting off. Then I'll go to the NFC, the Cardinals. I was debating between Cardinals and Panthers, but I think the Cardinals have, more upside. I think the Panthers, we kind of know what they are at this point. I think the Cardinals can get even better than they are. Once their offense starts clicking, their defense starts clicking, I think, they'll end up being better than the Panthers. So I have them at 4-5. Sneaky team that you brought up, Houston Texans. I have them at 5-2-0. They haven't really beaten anyone. I mean, they beat the Chiefs at home in week 2. In week 1, we saw Brock debut, and they beat the Bears, who are pretty bad as well. But, if they can beat New England on Thursday night, which they should, if New England starts Jacoby Brissett, they'll start, grabbing some headlines. They've always been missing a quarterback. They have a great wide receiving core, and they have a, decent defense, good pass rushers. Secondary's a little suspect. So, the Titans move into my top 5 this week.
Yeah, that's pretty solid. Week 1, after week 1, I believe I had Pats, Broncos, and Steelers 1-3. So I really didn't see anything in week 2 to make me change that. Like you said, the Patriots, you can't really bash them for anything. They've been really solid to start off the year. Broncos, Simeon's been really surprising. The defense has been incredible. They just lost DeMarcus Ware. He'll be out for a little bit with a broken forearm, so it'll be interesting to see how that affects them. But they've been really great to start off the year, coming in as the reigning Super Bowl champs. And the Steelers, we talked about them. They've looked solid. So I'll stick with those teams at 1-3. At 4, pretty tough. I believe you had the Cardinals at number 4 as well, and I agree with you there. Of course, they fell short at home against the Pats week 1, but, little did we know what Garoppolo would establish himself as. So that doesn't necessarily look like as bad a loss now. They destroyed the Bucs. They're definitely for real. They're definitely a Super Bowl contender. I mean, I guess they've looked far and away like the best team, which is weird to say because they've lost a game, but they really look like the best, most complete team so far. In the NFC, except for one, maybe, which is going to be my number 5. I was tempted to go with the Panthers, but I'm going to have to give some love to the Vikings because, what can you say? They've had all these injuries. They shocked the world basically with Sam Bradford suffering that. He suffered a pretty gruesome-looking hand injury, but he came back in, believe it or not, the 10-man. Sam Bradford seems to constantly stay hurt, but, he persevered, and he played arguably the best game of his career Sunday night in beating the Packers in that grueling, classic NFC North battle. Now Adrian Peterson's hurt. Who knows what that'll turn out to be. I've seen reports he could be out for 1 week or 4 weeks or 4 months if he opts to have surgery, so who knows. But you have to give it to him, man. I honestly feel like Mike Zimmer, other than the obvious coaches like Belichick, maybe a couple others, he's really he's a true elite coach. And I guess other than Belichick, you can maybe make the case that he's the most well-rounded, smartest coach there is in football right now. If you look at what they were able to do last year, and they've already gotten off to a great start. How many teams can lose like their franchise, their young, burgeoning superstar quarterback, and just a freak, awful practice injury so close to the start of the regular season and start off the way that they have? It's really impressive. I'm not sure how long they can keep this up with Sam Bradford. I really don't trust him. He can get hurt. Not only can he get hurt, in any game, but he could just completely fall apart playing-wise in any game. But, so far, what can you say? They're beat all to heck, and, they've basically had to completely change. They had old man Sean Hill starting week 1. Then they go to Bradford. Solid to start the year. Gotta figure maybe the Packers will surpass them at some point, but who knows? Maybe the Vikings can win that division for the second straight year. But they've been pretty impressive so far, and I'll put them at number 5.
Yeah, they're gonna win with their defense, just like any other team with a subpar quarterback and a subpar offense. They kind of remind me of Seattle in the way that they're just gonna have to do just enough to win the game, but their defense is going to keep the team under 21 points almost every game. So they're just going to have to score 17 to 21 points every game, and they'll probably end up winning. So why don't we move into our upset pick of the week? You had the Colts last week on the road at the Broncos. They lost. It was a closer game than the final score kind of, bled out 34-20, but it was closer than that. I had the Falcons at the Raiders, and that was a wild game. You had Crabtree throwing the ball at the player, allegedly taking the penalty, and then the Falcons ended up winning. Crazy deflection touchdown late in the game by Justin Hardy. So I'm 1-0, you're 0-1. Who you got this week for your upset pick?
You can start off this week, because I started off last week. I think maybe
All right.
I took yours. You start off this week.
I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills hosting the Arizona Cardinals. We've been talking up the Cardinals, but I just think Buffalo is going to be a tough place to play, especially they're hungry. They're 0-2, lost to the Jets on Thursday night. Another guy that could be on the hot seat, Rex Ryan there. So I think he'll have his team ready for the Cardinals. I see Tyrod Taylor scrambling a lot this game. Everything's on the line. They can't suffer another loss. I like the Bills at home versus the Cardinals this week.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. I guess the easy one, after I just talked about them so much, would be the Vikings. They're 7-point underdogs at Carolina. But I don't know. I'm kind of looking at Detroit. I mean, Green Bay they're a 7.5-point favorite at home against the Lions. But, so far to me, Green Bay's offense has looked all out of sorts.
Yeah,
Detroit struggled this past week against the Titans, but I think maybe the Titans are a little better than people are giving them credit for, at least on the defensive side of the ball. I definitely think Detroit will cover in that game. I'm tempted to say I also think they'll win. I guess I am saying that.
Yeah, you got to say that.
But, there are several different games with potential for big upsets this week, but I'm going to go with Detroit because, I don't know, man. Maybe this Green Bay window is closed. I mean, they've been about the same in terms of roster talent and skill for the past 2 or 3 years now. And they've really underwhelmed to start the season off. I mean, Aaron Rodgers statistically hasn't been anything to write home about since really midway through last season. I mean, Green Bay's been good, but and he's been good himself. But I mean, I don't know. It's just like the chemistry that used to be there is not really there. I mean, I know Jordy Nelson's coming off a knee injury. But that offense is definitely not looking good. I mean, it may finally caught up with them not having a true, solidified running game. Of course, Eddie Lacy can be good, but, I mean, he's just kind of good in stretches, and then he just kind of disappears. But Detroit, they stumbled week 2, but that offense looked amazing week 1, especially considering it was the first game in a long time without, Megatron on the roster. But, who knows? Green Bay, they're at home, but I mean they definitely didn't. They definitely haven't looked good to start the year off. So I think maybe Detroit could shock a lot of people and get revenge for that Hail Mary that Aaron Rodgers beat them with last season.
Yeah, that definitely killed a couple Lions fans, gave them heart attacks when Rodgers threw that last year. So I'm gonna have Buffalo at home versus Arizona. You have Detroit going on the road to Green Bay. 2 hardened cities. 2 cold weather cities, so we'll see if they can pull out a victory for their loyal fan bases. I think that's it for the second episode. Remember to subscribe. We're on iTunes. Check out The Ledge. Check out our fantasy football podcast too. That'll be posted tomorrow as well. Get your lineups in with the Patriots game starting Thursday, so you want to lock in all your players, daily fantasy, all that good stuff. They'll handle that over there. Other than that, I think we cover everything. Thanks for another episode, Cole. See you later, man.
All right, man. Thanks for having me.